Welcome to the Lovecars On The Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff Needell, and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars On The Grid, your global motorsport podcast roundup, where Tiff returns from a glorious weekend racing at Goodwood, whilst I've been mixing up with the biker boys in Italy. There was the usual carnage in Greece, where the rally stars focused at the arduous terrain of the Acropolis Rally. World Superbikes were in France, and Toprak Razgatlioglu didn't win a single race.
No, didn't win one.
I know. NASCAR, they began their playoffs in Atlanta, and one of the big favourites and Tiff's favourite, Kyle Larson, hammered the wall there. Whilst back home, British GT win at Donnington for father and son team of Rob and Ricky Collard, puts them in touching distance of taking the title. No news really. Let's go straight into Goodwood, because that was the weekend. I was watching from afar. I'm in Italy, as you know, still here, and it looked like lots of sunshine and lots of rain.
There was no sunshine. Well, there was about the end of the day. The last day, I think, we had a half a day. Oh, what a shame for the car parks. But I mean, everybody trudged through, It was so dangerous. Everyone was carrying brollies, but the spirit was still there. It is Goodwood, and people will just keep on coming and dress up for the occasion. It's the most wonderful weekend. And the 27th Goodwood Revival. I've done every one of them. I've done them all. I've now done a third of my life that's been going to Goodwood Revival meetings. They're always new. They're always fresh. You always think like it's the first because of all the extra bits they put on and mixing it with the superstars. I bumped into Adrian Newey, how's the how's the deal gone? All right, isn't it? Yeah, couple of, could you lend me a quid or two, Adrian? He's a lovely bloke, so down to earth. He was racing his E-Type with his son, which is really nice. So
he's fast, his son.
Yeah, they both. I'm not sure how they got on in the race. I didn't look at the result of theirs actually. But it was a wonderful thing. And of course, all the history is always there, these old cars. And I was lucky enough to race a Lister Chevy Nobly. Well, it was a 58 car. It had great history. Again, you often got history cars. This is one of the 8 Listers that Carroll Shelby bought. So Carroll Shelby bought, this was before he got into his Shelby Cobras, because Shelby was a car wheeler and dealer supplying racing cars for all the Californians and local mates and stuff. And he saw the Listers and bought 8 of them. And of course, not with a Jaguar engine. He put his own Chevy engines in. And the car I had was actually one that Jim Hall, who had become famous for creating Chaparral racing cars, raced a lot. So a lot of, unfortunately, I think they've now got a lot more power with the way they've managed to develop V8. Same with the Cobras that race at Goodwood. They're able with modern science to give these V8s a lot more power than Jim Hall had. And it was stinkingly wet when I was out of this car. And it just had too much torque, too much power. We mentioned this before, I think, when we talk about torque, how journalists with road cars, oh gosh, it's got another 300 Newton somethings and pounds per feet of torque. But torque is a leverage. People don't understand what torque does. And so the more leverage you've got, the more easy it is to break your traction. And when you only got little narrow tyres, not like big slicks on wet surfaces, I couldn't open the throttle this thing more than a quarter before the rear wheels were lighting up. It was a straight line everywhere. It wasn't well sorted car. It had lots of provenance, but I couldn't drive it at any sort of pace at all. And the owner was even slower and stuff. So, but funny enough, it was the Sussex Trophy, one of these traditional races. And it was the Sussex Trophy. I did my first revival back in 1988 in a Lister Jaguar. And funny enough, I tweeted the photos. They happened to be side by side in the paddock stalls.
I saw that.
So my 2 Listers. The other thing about this Lister Chevrolet, which I've never driven one of these before, because this huge V8 with the carburetors on top of it, it's got a huge power bulge. And I couldn't see the left-hand side of the track at all in qualifying. So I had to sit on a big cushion so I can see. It was an experience, let's say.
Did you really? So I'm surprised at that, because you're 6 foot.
I know. Well, the owner's 6'6", so I think he sits on the floor. So I didn't fuss about getting a seat made. Well, I hadn't driven it, of course. As usual, you turn up on the day, you don't test the cars, and so it was an experience. I don't even know where we finished. I don't want to look.
It doesn't normally rain though, does it? You've been at the.
It's rare, yeah, but certainly not for so long. We've had thunderstorms in the middle of races occasionally, which wake us all up. But yes, everywhere. The funny enough, there weren't as many big crashes as normal. It's amazing, isn't it? People think, oh, when it's wet, God, there'll be people be going off everywhere. But you have more respect for the conditions when it's wet. You don't launch in with so much overconfidence and bravado. You go in a bit more tentatively.
Yeah.
It also spreads the racing out. But there were some amazing races. There was Simon Hill and the TT itself. They were bashing wheels in the Cobra and the TVR. Some fantastic races.
Who was one of the big
crowd.
names of their racing? Was Jensen there this year?
No Jensen this year. There weren't any that big names this year. There's Bobby.
You were the biggest name.
There we go again. No way. Dario Franchitti was there, racing with IndyCar star, NASCAR star. There was lots of. My brain's gone. I only woke up this morning. It was a long week. I was actually in the very first qualifying session at 9 a.m. on Friday, and I was in the very last race of the weekend at 6 p.m. Sunday.
That's so unlucky.
Jimmy Johnson, of course. Jimmy Johnson was there. So my other race, I was lucky I had two races. The one that scared me silly in the Chevy wasn't enjoyable, but I was in this gorgeous little 1953 Jaguar C-Type, owned by a lovely lady called Margaret Jackson, who her husband used to race and sadly passed away about 3 years ago. It was their sort of car they did Tour de France's and raced a lot. And so she just wanted it out on the track again, a lovely lady. And in the wet, we had a qualifying in the wet on the Friday, and I put it fourth on the grid. So I thought, well, yeah, we're in for a podium here. We're on. But sadly in the dry, with the very dry race, again, a car hadn't driven at all, wet or dry. And it didn't have the horsepower of the other cars. I discovered quite early on lap one, but I gradually drifted back to about eighth. I go, done for a jump start as well. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Well, the amazing, the C-Type Jaguar, there's no hydraulic clutch pedal. It is a lever to the side of the gearbox clutch housing on a stiff spring. So you haven't got much sort of feel. And I was sort of holding it near the bike point, but as soon as I moved my foot about a quarter of an inch, I was off. I might have been slightly. I think it was a perfect start. But it was a lovely car. So I had a nice dry race, slid around, had a battle with three midfielders, which I enjoyed immensely.
So you were in trouble with the stewards, were you, Mr. Needell?
So that was my weekend. Whilst you were sunning it,
highlight of revival?
Well, just driving around the track in a C-Type Jaguar.
How many people came up to you and asked for a selfie?
There was several. It's wonderful. People wander around, muddy shoes, muddy. Everyone's got muddy shoes, muddy feet.
Anyone say they listen to the podcast or not?
A couple say they listen to us. They're out there somewhere.
Oh, good. Well, it's good to hear. Thanks for listening.
So, but you weren't exactly in the sunshine in Italy, though, were you? I watched the racing. I'm caught up on the telly.
It was hot. It was really, really hot. It was, I have to say, it was amazing. We're so lucky. I never want to take this for granted because we're guests of MotoGP. We're doing a little bit of filming. Victoria and Fran from MotoGP, which is amazing. And literally, go where you want, lads, but, respect the situation. A few people were a little bit sort of shirty. It's not like Formula One. Although it is the Formula One equivalent on two wheels, it's a lot more relaxed. But still, there are only certain areas you can go. I think it's like Formula One for those who know Formula One sort of 20 years ago. It's like that, where it's you got that informality.
Well, I got my tweets you sent, my little Tiff, hello Tiff from Jake Dixon, hello Tiff from Kimi Antonelli. I was very honoured with those.
Well, Jake, what a lovely lad he is. You've always spoke very highly of him. Yeah. And Kimi Antonelli, I said to him, I had a chat with him in Alpine Stars Hospitality, and I just said, mate, you will not be able to do this again, because he's walking around, he's stopping for everybody to have a photo and a selfie. And you know what it's like on your.
Ollie Behrman was like that. I was with the hospitality with Ollie Behrman at Silverstone, and he'd stop for everybody. And there's a sort of the people next door that weren't even supposed to be in his hospitality still said, "Oh yeah, smiles and pics." So as you say, they won't be doing it for much longer.
And he actually said, "What should I do?" And I said, "Well, the other drivers keep walking, and if you want a selfie, you got to keep walking with them," type thing. He said, "Yeah, you're right." But anyway, so he was a lovely lad as well. It's hard to believe he's a Formula One driver. And these guys, we walked out into the middle of the track. The access was just incredible. Went to the turns. I guess they were turns two to six. So you could see turn one where a lot of them come off in the chicane. Turn two where they go there. And the speed of these bikes. they're not as fast as cars, as Formula One cars, but my goodness, they seem twice as fast because you can just see everything and they're leaning and just it was incredible seeing it and hearing it firsthand. Moto GP sprint race was just epic. There's three.
It was a bit dull on the race. It was a bit pedestrian because, when Jorge Martin made this amazing drag start from fourth on the grid, the sprint race specialist to take the lead at turn one. And that was pretty much race over, wasn't it? I mean, they were all close.
No, Jorge Martin completely. Are you talking about the sprint race now?
Yeah.
Yes,
I
mean,
so the sprint race, the main race was very exciting because of the weather, but the sprint race was actually one of the more processional ones.
Well, you actually don't get to see that much when you're on a live event because you're there and you can see. You feel like you can touch them so close to these guys going past you. But Bagnaia was absolutely devastated in front of his home crowd that he finished second for the sprint.
Yeah. Marquez, of course, unfortunately qualified badly in ninth, and he did a bit better the next day, but he only got through the fifth in the sprint race, Marquez. But he's always a bit of entertainment. But yeah, that was the only real excitement, was Marquez moving up. But obviously, the Grand Prix turned out to be a nail-biting, amazing race with an incredible result. And it looked like it was going to be a bit processional at first, because this time Bagnaia got the whole shot and got ahead of Martin, this great championship that has been going on for all season. They've been going so close on points. And then all of a sudden was this sprinkle of this thing called rain. Was it really raining that much?
No. I mean, everybody was just shocked. It was still like 30 degrees. It was really humid. So the track would have taken a lot of rain to get wet. And he gambled, but he didn't need to gamble.
This is Jorge Martin, we're saying, running second, still leading on probably about equal on points. They're so close on points, it switches every weekend.
Well, you say that. He dropped 20 points. He was.
But before he came into the pits, I think he was still leading the championship
by
5 or 6 or something.
No, by 30. It's by 28 points. He was leading.
It was ahead. It was quite well ahead.
Yeah. So it's now.
And then into the pits he goes. Yes. To everyone's shock and disbelief. And
he was genuinely coming into the pits, looking and couldn't believe that nobody else was coming in. And you knew then he made a mistake. But because we never even felt like it was, the clouds were, the skies were dark. It never felt like it was going to rain like that at all. Yeah. So really, really surprised. So because by now we'd already lost Pedro. Pedro Costa who's had a bit of a dip in the middle, and he's got better. He finished, I think, fourth in Spain. He was on the podium in Spain, wasn't he? And then he crashed again. I mean, the sprinkles hadn't started, but he went out wide. He went completely off course onto some curbing, then came back on track, obviously with slightly dirty tyres, and tipped it into the next corner, and down he went. But he has been sitting in the gravel traps on the beach a bit too often, Acosta, this sort of great, whether he's just trying too hard or what's going on. Obviously, he's still on the last year's KTM. He's not on the latest bike, but I think he's just trying too hard. Well, I don't know. I spoke to a few people about that, and you've said as well, the thing is, in a car, if you have a moment in a car, you normally get it back. You lose time, but you can get it back. But on a bike, if you have a moment, that's it, because you've only got the two small, tiny bits of contact points to the surface. So, so maybe he was trying too hard, massively offline, and it didn't end very well for him. But then all of a sudden, so after Martin had pitted, Bagnaia seemed to back right off. He was now leading, when he was already leading. And he thought, so he suddenly had a queue of 7 bikes behind him, a whole bunch. And of course, the now white new colour schemes for Gresini. They're normally that lovely light blue, but they were this white bike started snapping through the field and took the lead, and it was Marc Marquez. Already now the conditions came to him, and he just flew away, didn't he? But I couldn't get anywhere near him. No. I think he was like 3 seconds behind at the end. He couldn't get anywhere near him, which normally they're such close races, aren't they? But he couldn't get anywhere near him. So no Italian winning, the Spanish winning that, and then Moto2, the Japanese guy Aya Ogura, who's got a ride in MotoGP next year. He won that battle with the Spaniard Aaron Canet. Jake Dix did a bad qualifying. I don't know, just didn't seem to. He was 14th. But came really good drive through the 5th. So that was good for Jake. Watching and cheering, of course. There's hardly anyone there that was British, sadly. And in fact, I had a chat with Simon Patterson. He's quite a famous motorcycle journalist. He said he doesn't think there'll be. He writes for the race. He said he doesn't think there's going to be a single British rider in MotoGP for at least 10 years. He said that's how out of touch we are, and how good Spain and Italy are.
I know it is a good shame. Of course, we'll come to Moto3 in a minute when we've got our only other Brits. Only two Brits, all those riders. We just got Jake, and Jake could well be the champion in Moto2 next year, but he's one of those riders where he hasn't sort of shot to the top, and you sort of think he's not going to get through to the MotoGP seats. So again, like Formula One, there's only two riders I think going up, maybe three going up from Moto2. Jake, you never know. Jake might. You never know.
Well, my inside track on that is that he won't. If he did go up, he's too old, and he would probably be middle of the pack. This is what the inside track is there. So there's no real incentive to take a chance on one of the younger guys, which is a shame. But
the other story about the stress of these younger guys, I don't know whether you saw this at all, because the who was the championship leader, Sergio Garcia, this 21-year-old Spaniard, he had 2 wins early on. He was leading the championship by quite a lot. He's had a terrible dip in form. I think he finished 14th in Austria. He crashed in Spain. He's right at the back of the grid. He finished 12th, lost his championship lead to Agura. And he came into the pits and he was just bawling his eyes out. You might not have known that even happened, but the cameras were in the garage as it is, and he was just absolutely, he's lost his championship lead and he's off the pace. And I think he was very close to a MotoGP ride, it's the whole thing crumbling down.
You do miss a lot at live sports. The accent. I champagne sprayed over me from the podium. It was that literally the first person there. But you do miss a lot when you don't see what you do on television. But it was spectacular. It was really amazing. I think my favorite was the Moto3 main race.
That I was just about to say, that was the only real cracking race. They were a bit spread out, Misano. Obviously the rain spread them out of MotoGP, and Moto2 was a very close battle at the front with Canet and Ogura. That was pretty spectacular. I watched that. But no win for David Alonso, the Colombian. Did you get to see the smiling? He wasn't smiling at the end of the Moto3 race. He got barged out on the last lap by someone who came inside him, and all his famous last lap moves, that he's always the one that comes out of the front with his huge smiling grin. So they didn't work this time, and it was very aggressive around Misano. They were just shutting the door. The rider would come up the inside and then just lean into them. Oh, flipping up! But it was a win, a sensational win. This is the next superstar, according to what I've read. We've got Pedro Acosta, of course. Then we've got David Alonso. These two names are going to be the future champions. Well, listen, Harks, apparently all right. Angel Piqueras, Spanish rookie this year, is the next one, 17. He's won the rookie Red Bull rookies. He won some MotoGP 3+ championship, something. But he had this double long lap penalty. He hasn't won this year. He's had some good results. And he goes off, loses 10 places. I think he was running about first or second, dropped about 12th or 13th, comes back through the pack, goes on a long lap, goes back again. It was unstoppable because there was a lead pack of about 5 or 6, and he was in a sort of second pack. But he just closed the gap, brought the second pack with him, and then just barged through the other children and took the win.
It was such a brilliant thing. You want the rookie, you want the young kid to win, don't you? Really? Well, I do.
Well, half and half, because there's a bit of a grudge with Mr. Ogden. I don't know whether you're aware that he had his 2 long lap penalties because he put poor old Scott Ogden off at about 120 mile an hour corner in qualifying. And Scott's been going a little bit better recently. He obviously must be worried about his future because this is his 3rd year, I think, now with being financed to do the Moto3. And he hasn't had that greater results this year. But he was on a better lap because they take the top, after free practice, the top 14 go through automatically or something, and the slower ones go out. And Scott was on a faster lap that could have got him into the top 14 for the final qualifying. And sector, and he was near. It was in the 3rd sector when Piqueras obviously also wanted to go fast. It comes inside him on a really fast, long double apex sort of corner, and just hit him. And Scott was tumbling, terrified. He must be battered and bruised. So he ended up starting 20th. But actually had quite a good race. Finished 15th, but he must have been hurting all the way through. So it's one of those things, when you're a rider like that, just when you think things can't get any worse, you get some 17-year-old sensation putting you in the gravel at 120 miles an hour. So
it's scary stuff seeing them fall off right in front of you. But 9 times out of 10, they just run over and try and grab their bike and get on.
Well, no. When the front folds, it's normally quite a simple slide, because you're going with the bike. Often, keeping the revs going, and most of them hold the clutch in while they're sliding along. But if you get tipped over, the tank
slappers are the horrible ones, aren't they?
Yeah.
But MotoGP, Moto2, Moto3, amazing. Really,
yeah.
If you haven't been to see one, go and watch, because it is very special. I was lucky that I was so close to the action, but I still think it would be good to watch from the stands.
We can go to Alton Park this weekend to go watch the Superbikes at Alton Park. See bikes. And Alton Park, great track to watch bikes. So have a go. World Rally Championship. The other World Championship going on last weekend was the Greece's Acropolis Rally.
Bit of a rally of attrition, wasn't it? There?
I know, but it always is. The boulders there. But funny enough, it's weird how the rally world's literally turned itself upside down. We'll come to that in a second, because it always used to be Toyota that would be the top 3 and would stay full, and the Hyundais would lead and go fast and then all drop out and break down. And now the whole championship seems to be upside down, because it's the Hyundais that dominated the results, whereas the Toyotas, both Elfyn Evans and Ogier had turbo problems, I think, early on, and then both ended up upside down on their roofs, tried to chase the Hyundai. So it was quite bizarre that this World Rally Championship has completely changed. Elfyn Evans, that's sort of always been the bridesmaid, as we said, in Toyota. Well, everyone else won the championship. We thought this was going to be his year, with Rovanperä not doing the whole season, Ogier not doing the whole season. And instead, it's just turned to pot. I think Ogier is still the chaser of the championship, Nerville, even though he finished nowhere. We finished about 16th. So we had a Hyundai 1, 2, 3, Nerville, Sordo, and Tanak. All 3 led at one stage. Tanak led early on, and I got a puncture. So amazing. In fact, the next 12 cars to finish were all WRC2 cars. Ogier was the next World Championship contender in 16th place.
I think Payara finishing 4th in a WR2 car, in a Toyota WR2. I think that's the highest that a WR2's ever finished.
Oh, is it? Quite possible.
I think.
But the result, he tied. I mean, this amazing. WRC2 could not have been closer, because both Pajara, the Toyota, and Robert Williams in the Skoda, the Estonian, Finland in the Estonian, they both ended up 7 minutes, 1.1 seconds off the leader. Identical times.
Wow.
And rather bizarrely, the tiebreaker is who was quickest on the first stage, which I think is a bit bizarre. Surely it would be count back to who started the last stage in the lead. Wouldn't that be fairer? You've done 20 stages. He had a 30-second lead, Pajara, going into that final stage. Then he had a puncture. So he lost his 30-second lead. And I'd have been a bit pissed, to be honest. If I'd equaled my times, but I lost because of who was fastest on the first stage, what? Come on, Rally Championship. Come on, sort yourselves out. Surely it must go to who was leading going into the final stage.
So,
do you agree?
Yeah, I do agree. Yeah, for once, I do agree with you. Hyundai got their hand on the trophy for the Construction Championship, and Thierry Neuville as well. And he's signed for another year, for 2025, but they haven't extended it any further than 2025 because it's quite uncertain what's going on. There's rumours
I know.
Team and
World Rallying could implode. It could go to WRC2 cars. The manufacturers pull out. Ford, they're just not as quick. They haven't got the funding. They're fighting, one hand tied behind them. They've done really well this year, Ford, but not this rally, but on many others. Yeah, World Rallying faces a bit of a dilemma, I think, in the future.
I wonder what's going to happen because, I hope Hyundai aren't going to pull out after the end of 2025, but it's all getting too complicated. That's the problem, Tiff.
Yeah, expensive.
Yeah.
So any other real event, World Championship, was the Superbikes at Magny-Cours, where Toprak Razgatlioglu didn't win a single race because he wasn't in a single race. Poor old Toprak. He fell in qualifying. I don't know what he hurt. It was his back, wasn't it? There was something. Yeah, there was something. Anyway, they said he shouldn't ride. during the weekend. They put him on the bench. But there was a bizarre first race. It was actually won by his teammate, which was so that the BMW winning streak continued thanks to Michael van der Mark. I would have called him Mark. One of his brothers called Mark van der Mark. It's Michael van der Mark, a Dutch guy. But it was a race. They started on slicks and some were on wets and some were on intermediates because it was drizzling with rain in France as well. Rain was all over Europe, wasn't it, last weekend?
Yeah.
But it was just, and of course they have to change their wheels when they come in. They can't jump on the spare bike like MotoGP. So it was a lot of lost time. Someone was out front trying to keep going on slicks, trying. He had about a sort of 45-second lead, but eventually fell off because it was all too slippy. So Van der Mark won the first race in those conditions. Scott Redding came through, our British previous champion. He's never really done well in World Superbikes since he joined, because he must have had about 4 or 5 years with BMW now. And of course, with Toprak coming in and blowing everybody away, it's a bit of an embarrassment for old Scott. Anyway, had a good result, 4th. Van der Mark failed to keep the great BMW winning streak going because he was 8th in the Super Bowl race and 5th in the final race. So both the other 2 races were run by the Ducati team works driver Nicolas Boulanger. Alex Lowes was best Brit in the second race. He was just 10th of a second behind Boulanger on his Kawasaki. Redding had another 4th. And in the third race, Lowes was 4th and Redding was 8th. So lots of action. I didn't watch much of that because we were a bit busy, but nevertheless entertaining. I caught up with NASCAR last night but fell asleep halfway through it, I have to confess. But was wide awake when Kyle Larson had this crash. So they're starting the playoffs now. I know you don't understand it, but they've got 3 races now where they've changed the points. The bottom 4 of the top 16 will be removed from the point system. So 3 rounds to go through to the second phase of the playoffs. And of course, Larson, I mean, it's quite a high banked, short oval. So it's a bit like a sort of short track Daytona in a funny sort of way, really quick, flat out stuff. And Larson running third early on, about 11th to 12th lap, it just went into a tiny oversteer. It's all on the internet now, you can watch. And he just overcorrected. It looks like he overcorrected. He just shot up the hill and just hit the barrier. There was a camera. Lucky they introduced these safer barriers, this amazing sort of sandwich system that NASCAR introduced that's followed around the world at other tracks. But you can see how much the sandwich went. If that had been a concrete wall of 30 years ago, I mean, that's why they have hands. That is why you have a hands device for that sort of old-fashioned concrete crash. But I mean, he just pummeled the wall, span down the road. Luckily, most people missed him. It was smoke and tires. But poor old Chase Briscoe clobbered him. Briscoe was the guy that only just won through to the playoffs. So now you come to playoff points, you see. So Bush has probably got no chance of getting into the top 12 now because he got no points because of the crash. And Larson's now in a problem because he's dropped to 10th. So he was leading the points because he started the playoffs with all his bonus points for all his wins he had. You know that. I told you that last week. But even so, Larson now has dropped to 10th. And only the top 12 will go through to the next round. So Larson needs to get a couple of results in. But yeah, frightening crash. Why? He thought he might have had a puncture. He thought a tire had gone down or something. The way it snapped on him. He was full throttle, flat out. And he just had this snap of oversteer and up into the wall. It was a good finish towards the end. There was a late caution. In fact, it came up to the who could push better because the front row was Joey Logano and along with Daniel Suarez, but they had their respective teammates lined up behind them for the restart. And Ryan Blaney did a better Penske push on Logano than Ross Chastain did a trackhouse push on Suarez, which all meant that Joey Logano won. He's now through. If you win, you go straight through. He's guaranteed a top 12, so he doesn't have to worry for the next 2 rounds. So, yeah, I didn't watch all the race. All the usual stuff. The usual bit of a crash drama and the usual red-white checker, green-white checker finish that seems to be the system. So we just had
entertainment value.
Sorry?
Entertainment value.
I didn't watch it. I was asleep. I fell asleep. I was knackered. And I could have watched it this morning, but we were trying to get our podcast, so I just read the
What's
results.
the traffic like coming out of Revival yesterday evening?
Well, I was last out, so there was no traffic at all.
I,
I think a lot of people have probably gone home. I'm surprised because I was in the last race. They didn't all stay to watch Tiff Needell in a C-type Jaguar. I'm amazed. But some obviously left early, so it was quite good, the transition. Yeah, I drove straight out the paddock car park without even stopping, pretty much.
the traffic and the weather last night coming out of Misano, we're heading all the way across towards Pisa, and for some filming tomorrow. And it took us over 2 hours to get 40 miles. It was absolutely horrific. Made Silverstone look good on Formula One day. And then the weather was so bad, so it took nearly 8 hours to drive 200 miles last night. It was awful, really bad.
What time did you get to bed?
Not too bad because we left it. Of course, don't forget it's 2 o'clock for the feature race at for.
Yeah, they're quite early. I don't know why they're always very early, aren't they?
Yeah.
Have I ever shown you my TIFF mug, by the way?
Let me see a tip mug.
Yeah. I've never promoted these things. I've got them about 10 years ago. On the back, it teaches you how to power slide. It tells you how to do it.
You teach me how to power slide one day.
No.
So
anyway,
TIFF mugs for sale anywhere?
I used to sell them. I've only got a few left now. I can make some more if popular demand. We don't do merch very well. See, Johnny Smithy's a merchant.
We don't do
Everyone's merch. Too much of a faff.
So we can't even get a sponsor. Dorna, who are the promoters for MotoGP, they've just extended their agreement. We need this negotiator to look after us till 2060.
2060.
What?
Oh, Liberty are buying. Has that happened yet?
Yeah, I don't know whether it's gone through, but Liberty are buying. FIM is the FIA.
Yeah.
Motorcycles, international motorcycles, whatever it is. And Dorma have just renewed their contract till 2060. That is just mind blowing. We'll be long gone. We'll be long gone. We'll be worm feed by then.
Anyway, back to racing. We haven't mentioned British GT. The only other thing that was big last weekend, especially for Barwell Motorsport, where the creative manager, director, Chris Needell, is obviously a part of the team. Rob and Ricky Collard, the father and son, they won the Donnington round. They virtually got the championship, 1 round to go, but that win gave Barwell team the team's championship. So good weekend for the Needells up at Donnington. Even better for the Collards who did the driving. Otherwise, that was it for the weekend. Next weekend, great Grand Prix. I love the Azerbaijan. The Baku city is a proper street circuit that creates racing and the speed and that little bit past the castle and overtaking everywhere. It's a good track. And of course, it's where Ollie Behrman won not only the reverse grid race, but also the main race, swept Baku. So Ollie likes Baku. Ollie's there. Ollie's in the Magnussen Haas due to Magnussen getting too many points on his license. So that'll be a really intriguing thing. Whether he sort of, I wonder whether he wants to be there. Does he want to sort of wait until he's settled into the team at the beginning of next year? Because it could sort of, well, I think he'd be fine. I think he'd be great. I think he'd be really good. Formula 2, of course, also there. So good entertainment from Baku. IndyCar have their final round in Nashville, an oval track, which will decide whether Alex Palou or Will Power will be the champion. But Will Power blew it last week by spinning out during the race, and it's a big points gap. But they're going. Everyone's going tyres now to make racing more exciting, aren't they? And NASCAR have got a red and black now, which they do on street races, but not on ovals so much. They've got a tyre choice on ovals, which might cause a bit of a joke of the pack. World Sports Cars, Fuji Speedway, which isn't quite the track it was when I used to battle around it. It's got a very fiddly last 5 corners. There used to be one great high-speed challenge, and now it's got a lot of fiddly stuff. So that will be the World Endurance Championship. NASCAR boys got a road course for the second of these 3 races that decide who gets into the top 12. So that can throw a big joker into the pack, because one of the less fancied in the 16 could win that race and win through to round 2. What else have we got? British Superbikes, as I said already, Alton Park, fantastic to go. And the Aussie Supercars, if you're living down under at Sandown Park. And that's all I've got.
That's enough. Thanks for joining. I'm
Cheers, all.
See you next
Bye.
week. Thank you.